microphone, baby. There we go.
Sweet.
So now
Who let you in here?
go ahead and move it. When she gets over here.
Alrighty, entering the ring, we have Kellen Abbas, Casey Cash, Jake Lawrence, Shane Beamer, Mason Lee, Desiree Simons.
There we go.
Bailey, you got your iPad? So John, you're not first or second, they're good to load up and go, correct? On the same page, if you're not first or second in your class, you're free to go home after you exit the ring. So just all we need left back is first and second place in each class. towards the ring, we have Logan Lee, Tristan Simons, Ellie Lawrence, Josie Jacobs, Wade Simile. Oh, no, just ends at Josie Jacobs, sorry.
Well, good morning, Jefferson County. It's certainly a pleasure and an honor to be here. Certainly a lot different this year than it was last year. Last year it was certainly a lot of excitement and there was a lot of people around the ring. And I would like to give kudos to whoever is in charge of making this happen this year. I know that was very challenging and stressful. I've been to several county fairs and I've judged several of them virtual. And it certainly, in my opinion, shortchanges these young people when you show virtual rather than actually being here and showing live. Really, kudos to all the management and the leaders and the fair board to actually have this happen. I even hear you're going to have a real live auction. I think that's also kudos to the leadership here in Jefferson County. I thought a lot about this as I was driving here to judge this, and how I do remember. Months ago, this was going to be a virtual show, if I remember correctly, and I did agree to do it, but I think it was Brian that I was talking, I said, keep up the fight though, keep up the fight, it's not over yet, and you can make this happen if you just do a few things to meet the governor's guidelines. Also, there's a couple things that I wanted to refrain from. Number one is just getting emotional and with my thoughts and how much I think of this program and how much it means to kids and to parents, and it's really a family organization. And you know as well as I do that as adults, what's been going on for the last 4 or 5 months, most of us adults have persevered, and life hasn't changed maybe that much if you were essential, where people are really getting shortchanged with these kids in this whole environment, in my opinion. So that was one thing that I didn't want to have happen is to get too emotional. I also didn't really want to get too political, but you'll probably, by the end of the day, probably see where I stand. Anyway, one thing that I think before we get started here, let's give all these exhibitors a big round of applause. I think these kids really worked hard out here. Another thing that I don't think that they get to do today is showmanship. So that's why in these market classes, I'm probably going to work a little longer than normal, give these kids a chance to get out here and get comfortable in the ring. And also, I want you to think of it as a showmanship contest. And in this particular class, if I was going to give a showmanship award, it would be this young lady right here. Let's go ahead and congratulate her. Excellent job for the Shorthorn Marks here. Now, to task at hand, I'm talking about these market calves. I think it's real close on the top. I think the steer wins the class. Here's a steer that's a little heavier condition. I think it's going to have a higher marbling score. He's really going to have, he's going to be fall into the choice grade, I think, quite handily. A steer that if I could change, he wants to get a little straight up front. But when I took him out there for the last walk and tried to beat him with the 1 second, I still thought he was structurally sound enough. I thought he struck it out long enough to go ahead and beat the calf in second. A real suitably sized, nice calf that the young man did a nice job of getting shown out here in second place. Really easy fleshing, deep rib steer. He did a great job of feeding this calf. A steer that I think is going to have a little nicer yield grade perhaps than the calf that's starting the class, but a really nice steer that did a really nice job. And I don't remember you from last year, but this is your first project. You deserve a big round of applause. You did a great job. Here in third, here's a man that if I was going to give a reserve champion showman in this particular class, it would fall right here to this young man with the red steer. Here's a steer that balances up real nice. A steer that's really long spine, but got a lot of angularity up there through his front end. A steer that just isn't quite stout enough or has enough natural thickness in comparison to the two steers that preceded him in class. But here's a steer that you really got to appreciate just from a balance standpoint. It's really easy to look at on the side view. Steer that, I'm sure the young man would agree, if he weighed 150 pounds, weighed 1325 instead of in the 11s, I think he'd be really, really tough. But excellent job for you. And those first three steers are all going to be blue ribbon steers, or two purples and a blue. I think they're all going to be your choice great steers. And I think as we fall into the first place red steer here, the Shorthorn Mark calf, here's a calf again, needs a little more time on feed. A steer that the young lady really puts together nicely, though. And even when you're down here and you weren't getting looked at, you still were showing and still had the steer put together properly, set him up nicely, keep his head up, keep him right in line with his spine. I think you do an outstanding job showing. Let's go ahead and give her a nice round of applause as she exits the ring. Then the young cowboy here next in line with the cowboy hat on. This young man, I remember him from last year, did a really nice job out here with this cap as well. He's a really calm, cool, methodical type of showman. A steer that just needs a little more time on feed. A steer that doesn't want to balance up quite as nice on the side view. Let's get a little easy in the stop and a little lower in the spin set. But certainly a calf that has some bone and he's structurally sound. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause as he exits. Then we come in here to the next young man, the FFA steer here. Here's a steer that just needs a little more time on feed. Steer that wants to get a little bare and hard to the touch, a little high in his flank. A steer that certainly you can tell this young man has worked hard with over the hair coat and keeping him under fans and nice and cool. So a steer that I think is going to have a hard time reaching the choice grade, but certainly a good calf and a nice young man showing the steer. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause.
And Logan Lee.
class here. I think you have a steer that kind of wins the class going away. In my opinion, you want one that combines some muscle, some ribs, some structural soundness, and one that's got a really cool look to him and still is finished pretty optimum. I think the silver steer wins the class quite handily and a really nice one to lead off with. I also like to give the young man some kudos. A really good showman. You notice he's really calm and cool and methodical out here. He leads his steer into it. There's one kind of general rule of thumb that I always try to preach, not only to my own daughter but to other kids, is that if you stop your calf and you have to touch more than 1 foot, you probably stop them in the wrong place. So if you can just kind of lead them into it, not touch any feet, that's really optimum. And if you watch that young man with the silver steer, that happened to him several times. He seldom had to move the foot with a stick. He would just lead him right into it. You can go ahead and lead that steer out here. Congratulations. The young man here in second, I think, is getting to be a better showman as time goes on here. I think that doesn't have quite as much experience maybe as some of the kids in the class, but does a nice job with this steer. One thing that he did do a really good job with this steer. Let's go ahead and switch hands now. You go ahead and park him right here, buddy, and show off a little bit. Here's a calf that the young man did do a really good job feeding. A steer, it's got some condition on him. You can see he's got some external indicators of condition around his pones and his cod, and he's deep in his flank, and he really handles nicely over his ribs. A steer that I think is really going to cut nicely and be fall into the choice grade. Steer here in third will be your third place blue calf. This young lady does a nice job showing as well. Really enjoys herself out here. She's very calm and cool and methodical with the show stick. Here's a steer that I think she fed well. A steer that's got some condition on him. I think he's going to be a choice. A steer that just needs to balance up a little nicer. He needs to be a little neater up there through his shoulder, a little stronger down his top line and higher in his pin set to go ahead and beat those 2 steers that preceded him in class, but really did a nice job feeding him. Then we come to the steer in fourth, which will be your first place red steer. Here's a steer that I think the young lady does a really nice job showing. Gets him out here and he's really got a lot of presence on the side view. Gets his feet in the 4 corners when she's out here on the rear view. Does a real nice job showing. I just think this steer needs a little bit more time on feed to go ahead and fall into the choice grade. A little harder about his ribs when you get out there and evaluate him. Doesn't have all those external indicators of condition as some of the steers that were up in higher in the class. Still, she did a really nice job. Let's go ahead and send her out with a nice round of applause.
Bring the 2 first in and then the 2 first. For the lightweight division, we have Desiree Simons and Shane Beamer and Logan Lee and Tristan Simons.
Really a nice division here to start your county fair with the lightweight division. I think there's a couple steers in here that I think I like quite a bit in terms of just a muscle, a volume, a structural correctness standpoint. I think there's one though that really suits me quite well, and as far as just one that It's really arrogant up front, really keeps his head up. It's really nicely made there through his neck, shoulder, forehead. Gets progressively wider all the way through, and he's the heaviest muscled steer. The silver steer will be your lightweight champion. Congratulations. Reserve champion will be the black steer right here. I think here's a really heavy muscle steer that also has a lot of condition on him, and I think he's going to have a very nice marbling score. Congratulations to the winners.
Okay, your lightweight steer is Logan Lee, and your reserve is Desiree Simons. If you guys want to stand by, could you come in for the Supreme Champion steer at the end of this? All right, moving into Class 3. We have Wade Simile, Emma Richards, Gabe Fessler, Helen Roll, Colby Holmes. These steers are ranging from 1,252 pounds to 1,290.
really a nice class here. And then your class 3, these steers all weigh between about 1250 and 1290. I think we have one that's going to start the class that does so quite handily, in my opinion. Here's one that's not going to blow you away from a muscle standpoint, but certainly one that's the nicest balanced steer in the class, the steer that's the heaviest condition. Really like the way the young man gets this one stuck. If this is a showmanship contest, it would be really tough between him and the young lady that is in second. I think if you from the outside, if you're beginning showman and you want to learn how to win showmanship contests, if you watch individuals like this and just how calm and cool they are, you notice that they're not using the show stick like a saw. They're using it as a method to keep the calf nice and calm, using the point to scratch the calf, and you see they very seldom even have to touch your feet. I really commend both of these individuals on a showmanship job. Very, very well done. Young man, though, that back to the black steer that wins the class. Here's a steer that hit me pretty hard when he walked in. A calf that's really easy to look at on the profile. He's really parallel on his lines. Really like the way his head comes out of the top of his shoulders. Here's a calf that's super sound on his feet and legs, and one that was certainly an excellent calf to get out here and win this particular class. Let's congratulate him as he exits the ring. Then we got the dapple gray, silver kind of colored steer here in second. A steer that I would like to see a little more condition on him. A steer that would really benefit from being here for 3 or 4 days before the show, because as you can attest to right now, I didn't ask the young lady, but I bet he didn't drink a whole lot of water this morning, and a couple buckets of water and a steer like that would really make a world of difference. Calf that really long bodied, long spined, again a very sound structured steer. In comparison to the class winner, though, not quite as much condition, not quite as deep in his flank. Certainly one, though, if he does fall into the choice grade, I think he's going to have a very desirable yield grade, because he's really muscular and has a lot of expression down his top and in there through his stifle. Let's go ahead and give her a nice round of applause, and an excellent job once again on your showmanship abilities. We have the yellow calf next in line, a big old deep-sided, got a lot of spring and shape to his rib up there through his forearm. Really like the way it's out thick right behind his shoulders. Steer from a balance standpoint, that's why balanced up as nicely as the two that preceded him in class. Speed is a little easier to stop. He wants to be a little lower in his front when he gets out here on the move. But the young man does a really nice job getting this steer shown as well. I think he's very deserving of a blue ribbon and into the choice grade as well. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause as he exits. We come into the two that were the most difficult for me to evaluate. Two steers that I think are just a little more common in their type. They're really nice calves, and they're growthy. They've done well on feed. Steers that just from a balance standpoint just need to be a little wider at their pins, a little more natural thickness and expression of muscle to go ahead and compete with some of these steers that were higher in the class. The red steer, I liked him over the black steer right at the last. I just think he's got a little more depth to his side, a little more depth to his flank. That might be just a little bit more condition on this calf to more safely fall into the choice grade. But I still think he's within the window and the parameters to go ahead and make it into the choice, as is this black baldy steer. The black baldy steer, I still think has enough condition on him. He's got some flank in him. A steer that's got some external indicators of some composition. A steer that I think the young man does a nice job and really did a nice job getting this calf to fair. I've been a joy out here sorting these calves today. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause and a great third class.
All right. Returning for your championship middleweight division will be Wade Similink and Emma Richards. So if they want to stand by, and then we'll do it after this next class. Moving into class 4, we have Kinley Baggett, Rory Jacobs, Lexi Wittenberg, Connor Commingore, Luke Fessler, and Annette Garcia.
Well, really an excellent class. The steers up here in the 1300 plus weight. I think that you've got maybe the three best steers that I've seen today in the same class. The young lady here in third, this is an awfully nice calf. You just fell into a class with two real studs in it. I think what kind of distinguishes it between these two calves here, I think that these are both very competitive show steers. I think the black steer, there's some give and takes from the first and second place steers. I think the black steer, without a question, is a sounder steer. I think he really gets out and flexes very nice, a real nice angle to his shoulder and his knee and his pastern. Really strides off nicely on his hind leg, and I like the set to his hind leg. And what really sorts him too, if you get behind him and you watch him walk, the black steer's got more base width than the smoke steer. Smoke steer, if you want to fall in love with one that's really easy to look at on the side view, one that's really cocky and up-headed and really nice and a nice hair coat, the young man does a nice job showing him, you're going to like the smoke steer. I think the smoke steer, though, I'd like to see him maybe just a little more base width when you get behind him. I'd like to see him maybe just a little smoother enough to his shoulder, a little nicer angle to his shoulder, down into his knee, but certainly a nice calf that really fell into a very tough class. Two really outstanding steers to be first and second. Let's send them back to the barn with a nice round of applause. Well done. And I think that the steer here in third is a registered Angus steer. Here's a calf that I think for a registered Angus steer, certainly you've got to admire him a great deal. The young lady did a really nice job with him. Did a nice job not only selecting him, a nice job feeding this calf, a nice job showing him, a nice job fitting him today. A steer that you really have to admire from a structure standpoint. He's sound on his feet and legs. He's very up-headed when she gets him parked properly. A steer that just in comparison to the crossbreds doesn't have quite the natural pop and flare to his stifle and as much muscle as the two that preceded him in class, but really an outstanding steer that, again, is probably the third best steer that I've seen today. Just an outstanding class and a job well done. Let's go ahead and give her a nice round of applause as she exits. Really coming to three really nice kids here that they're going to round out the class. Next young lady is fourth because of her steer's condition. Here's a steer that's got some condition on him. He's deep in his flank. He's really soft and mellow to the touch. He did an outstanding job feeding this steer. Really sound on his feet and legs. And again, just fell into an extremely tough class that had three really powerful calves to precede you. But really a nice steer here in fourth. Let's go ahead and give her a nice round of applause as she exits. Also a blue ribbon. The next steer here, the young man is also going to be a blue ribbon. I think he's going to meet the parameters to fall into the choice grade. He's got some condition on him. He's got some depth of flank. He really is pretty mellow to the touch when you get your hands on him. In comparison to some of those calves that preceded him in class, just needs a little bit more stoutness, a little more base width, a little more natural substance and thickness to him to go ahead and compete in this class. But really a good calf, and he did a nice job. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause. The steer next to here in line is a steer that really needs to be in probably the last class of the day. Needs to be in the heavyweight. I really like this calf more if he weighed about 1,500 rather than 1,300. A steer that is a little harder to the touch, a little higher in his flank, and I question his ability to fall into the choice grade. So he's going to go ahead and be your first place red. Let's go ahead and give this young lady a nice round of applause.
All right, winning your class is Lexi Wittenberg, and second is Connor Comingore. Coming back in for the midweight division, we have Wade Simile, followed by Emma Richards, and Lexi Wittenberg, followed by Connor Comingore. Right. Lex and Connor, if you guys want to hang out till the end of the show, and then you can come back in for the Supreme Drive. Entering the ring in Class 7 are Five is Carson King, Ellen. All right. Carson King, Fallon Gore, Jose Gamboa, Rylan Bear, and Maddie Buck.
Okay, let's go ahead and give these kids a nice round of applause. A really good class of steers, especially up here on the top end. I think up here on the top end, you've got two different kinds of steers. I think that both of them have some gives and takes. I think the steer that starts the class is one that when she gets in park, he's really hard to deny. Really cocky up front. They really like the way his head comes out of the top of his shoulders. A steer that I would maybe like to see a little more softness on his passage when he gets around the ring, but I still think he's long strided enough that you're not going to call him unsound. The steer in second, here's one that's really easy to look at when you get behind him. Really a big-ended, big top steer. He's got a lot of depth to his forerib. A steer when he gets out on the move, he wants to have a little hitch in his skid along off of his left rear. Wants to get a little bit high in his top when he gets out here on the move. Steer that's a little heavier condition than the steer that starts the class, and I don't know if that's going to help him or hurt him. I think the steer that starts the class is also going to grade choice pretty handily. But the young man really did a nice job and really has a nice calf to be second. Young man in third has really got a big, long-bodied steer that does an excellent job showing. Here's a kid that if you were out here in a showmanship contest, he'd have been really tough to beat today. Young man that's really calm and cool and methodical when he's on the stick. Really has a nice steer that he fed well. I think really easily falls into the choice grade. Very long body, kind of a calf that just doesn't have as much muscle as the two steers that preceded him in class, but really a good steer in his own right. It's a little harder to the touch, a little higher in his flank. Got a lot of expression of muscle, and I think if he does fall into the choice grade, he's going to have a very desirable yield grade. It's a little bit harder in his rib, a little bit higher, a little bit better in terms of his external fat indicators, but certainly a good steer in his own right. I think maybe just a little more time on feed in this steer would have been competitive. Just fell into an awfully tough class today, but I still give him the benefit of the doubt and give him. I think he's going to be choice. Same with the young man that's going to round out the class. I think here's a calf that the young man did a nice job feeding. A steer that's got some condition on him, and I think he's very deserving of a blue ribbon. Just from a profile standpoint, a balance standpoint, like to see him just a little cleaner in his sheath, like to see him just a little lower in his tail set to go ahead and be a little more competitive. But a really nice class from top to bottom. Let's go ahead and give him a nice round of applause.
All right, winning the class is Fallon Gore, and second place is Raylan Bear, and they'll be returning in for the heavyweight champion drive. Moving into your last class of market steers, we have Chase Comingore, Haley Bear, Fernando Gamboa, Logan Macy, and Paulina Gamboa.
See what kind of separates these two for me is just the nitpicky things. I think the steer in first is a wider base calf. I think he's got more width from stifle to stifle when you get around and watch him walk from behind. I would like to see him maybe a little cleaner in his left rear hock. I see he's got a little bit of swelling there, but I don't think it hinders his structure that much. Steer that you really got to appreciate though when you get him out on the move in comparison to the steer in second. Steer in second, man, he really is he's really very cocky and arrogant up there through his front end and really hard to deny when you get him out here parked and when he's set up. Young lady does an outstanding job getting this calf shown, walks in real slow to try to keep those back feet from being a little bit upright. She tries the best she can. It is very difficult when you get one like this. It's you can give them all the supplements in the world to try to get those pastures to soften up, and I don't know if I think a lot of it might be snake oil. But anyway, here's a calf that she really did a nice job with. I mean, he's fit to a T. He really does a good job showing this calf. A steer that really, this to me, when you get him out here on the move, when you get behind him and he wants to be a little narrower base than the class winner, a steer that wants to be just a little bit upright in his passions when he gets out on the move, but really nitpicky on an awfully nice one. Let's go ahead and congratulate her as she exits the ring. We come into these next three calves here. These three, I think, are real functional type steers. The steer that the young man has is going to be next does so from a muscle standpoint. You get behind him, and he's the heaviest muscle of these last three. He's wider at his pin set. He's wider based and bigger butted in comparison to the other calves that are still standing out here. A steer that really just from a balance standpoint on the side view isn't quite strong down his top line or high in his pin set as the two steers that preceded him. You really did an outstanding job feeding this calf. I think he's going to really fall into that window of choice without a doubt. And I think he just gets up there because of his muscularity. Then we come into the FFA young man next in line. Here's a steer that you got to appreciate from his depth of body, really deep to his chest floor, deep in his flank. This doesn't have quite as much condition on him as the steer that preceded him in class, but really a good steer in his own right. Easily falls into the blue ribbon in the choice category as well. Nice job feeding him. Then I think we're going to come in here to the big red steer. We're going to give him a first red. Here's a calf that needs a little more time on feed. You've got to appreciate him from his length of spine. Really long-bodied steer. Got a lot of grow in him, but again, he needs to be a couple 100 pounds heavier. He'd probably be more market ready at 1,600 than 1,400. But that's certainly a good calf in his own right. The young lady does a nice job getting him shown out here. Let's go ahead and give her a nice round of applause as she exits the ring.
All right, winning that class, we have Chase Commingore and second being Haley Bear. Coming back in for your heavyweight champion market steer will be Fallon Gore, followed by Ryland Bear, Chase Commingore, and Haley Bear.
Well, there's certainly four really nice steers out here. Is this on? Four really nice steers out here for your heavyweight champion lineup. Here's four steers that if you take any one of these four to another county fair besides Jefferson County and about two other counties in the state, I think they would be really vying for the champion of the whole thing. I mean, you see the four steers out here that have got some stoutness and some muscularity to them. They've all got some depth of side and some feeding ability. They're calves that not only are easy to look at out here in a show ring, but they're also the kind of calves that aren't so show ring oriented that their heifer mates wouldn't remain functional, and that if you did have to clone them and have 150 steers that look like this in a feedlot, they'd still function and be just fine. I think that's one thing the steer thing has gotten much better in the last few years. Not so much hair and flare and fluff and go. That these cattle are getting sounder. These cattle still have some muscle to them, and they still are the kind that you don't have to just go and make all their heifer mates be terminal. They're cattle that I think are really functionally sound and can also be feedlot cattle. There are two out here, though, that I think from a muscle and a volume standpoint really hit me pretty hard. I think there's a couple calves out here that are really fit the package for me, and I'll go out and show you which two those are for me. Let's go ahead and give everybody a nice round of applause.
Your champion heavyweight market steer goes to Chase Commodore, and your reserve to Haley Bear. Alrighty, so we are gonna line up for the Supreme Champion Drive. Returning from the lightweight division, we have Logan Lee and Desiree Simons. From the midweight division, we have Lexi Wittenberg and Connor Commodore. And from the heavyweight division, we have Chase Commodore and Haley Bear. Also, after the conclusion of this, we have 3 breeding classes. So if you want to hang around and watch and support those kids, that's great. I think there's 3 animals total. So if, they'll be right after this year, so.
and an honor to be able to sort through your steers here again at your Jefferson County. We're going to call it the livestock show, your steer show this year. We really don't have a fair. I'd really like to congratulate all the exhibitors. You know, this has been the weirdest 4 or 5 months of my life. I'm sure it's the weirdest 4 or 5 months of. I don't think there's anybody sitting around here old enough to ever remember weirder times than we're going through right now. Got to give you guys kudos though for having some stick-to-itness, staying mentally tough, and you know, only things can only get better, ladies and gentlemen. Just stay positive, stay safe, and heaven forbid, please cough and sneeze responsibly, and don't touch you. And I think we're all going to get through this. With that being said, again, you guys, really kudos to the management to keep this thing going. You know, you're very fortunate. You're very fortunate to be out here showing livestock and doing what we all love, and as a family and as a group to be able to do this and not have and actually have a fair. I don't know the statistics, but I think about half the fairs in the state were canceled right at the very beginning. So you can see they did not have as much support and as much stick-to-itness and as much drive, and they did. I'm not saying they didn't care about kids as much as this county did, but they certainly gave up the fight a long time ago instead of just waiting it out and seeing if they could find some silver lining and a light at the end of the tunnel to actually make this thing happen. With that being said, you guys all, I don't know how many people are listening online. It's really unfortunate that you can't be here to watch, but if you can see, you still have some very, very top quality livestock. Even better kids and parents around the ring. If you are grandparents or aunts and uncles that couldn't have a wristband because there was too many people that wanted them, I certainly understand that. But do rest assured that your people that you're rooting for and supported out here did so with class. They did so with some very, very high competitiveness, and they really came to town with some excellent livestock. Let's go ahead and give them all a nice round of applause. I think there's some outstanding calves out here. Just because the people online can't get out here and watch, I would like to describe these cattle one more time. I think that all of them are very deservedly so, and it's not going to be a showmanship contest. So you're gonna be able to just take these calves home, from what I understand, and then you're going to have a live auction at the sale barn, and that's kudos to the county for having a live auction. As we're coming here to the lightweight champion, here's a calf that I think it really is an outstanding individual in his own right. Very sound on his feet, legs. The young man does a really nice job getting this calf shown. A steer that's really sound when he gets out here on the move. Really easy to look at on the profile. I really give this young man a big kudos for a job well done. We come in here to the next steer line that I think is very much in contention for the whole thing. Here's one that really combines a lot of nice things. One that's really stout and muscular. Yeah, I love the way it comes out of his head and his neck and out of the top of his shoulders. He's a very sound structured steer out here. He's got a lot of flexibility and a lot of give on both his from the ground up. I like the way he holds his top line when he gets out here on the move. He's long strided. A steer that really is deceivingly stout. You get out here on the side beam, you see how pretty he is, and you get behind him, and he's really got a lot of base width and really a big hip in him. We're coming here to the big power steer here in the heavyweight division. A steer that you want one that's got a lot of muscle. He comes out of the shoulder blades. Just progressively gets wider down this top line, comes out into a really big hip and really wide in the spin set. You're really going to have to like this calf. Again, a calf I think is very much in the contention for the whole thing. A steer that if I could change him a little bit, especially the longer he's out here, the more I can see it. He wants to be just a little bit tentative on his left rear hop. And I think just because he got a little bit of swelling there, sometimes when these calves get a little bit older and been on this much feed, that kind of thing certainly happens. We come in here next to mine. We got the young lady with the reserve lightweight steer. She does a real nice job showing this calf. She enjoys herself out here. Really did a nice job feeding him. He's got a nice haircut. I think she learned a lot out here. A steer that in this particular lineup and a steer that beat him in division, just not quite as nice balance. Wants to get a little deeper in there through his chest in comparison to his flank. When we get him out here on the side view, he did a really outstanding job and commended for that. We come in here to the reserve middleweight steer that came out of a very tough division. A steer that just wanted to be, in comparison to the steer that beat him, wanted to be just a little shorter strided and a little wider up there through his chest floor in comparison to his base width when we get him out here on the move. But a steer that's really easy to look at when this cowboy gets in park. Really long spine and like the way he's built out his hip. Nice design to his hind leg. A steer that I would like to see longer strided as we talked about it in class. we come into the reserve heavyweight steer. Here's a steer that if you get him out here on the park, and you get him out here on the stand, he is really easy to look at on the side view. Young lady did a really nice job, and I assure you there is some genetics involved with this hair thing, but I promise you this steer probably didn't see the sunshine very much. This young lady did a lot of elbow work getting this steer presented this way. Just a really nice job, and on the stand, this steer is really hard to beat. And when I wanted, it's a little bit tentative out there on the move, and on his rear pasterns is what I think is kind of his hindrance out here. I really came out of a very tough division, and a super nice cap out here on the side view. Let's go ahead and give him another nice round of applause. I'll go show you the two that I like.
All right, your champions here is bred and owned by Lefty Wittenberg, and Chase Commodore is your reserve champions here. Now we will be moving into the heifer show, and for everybody knows, auction starts at 1 o'clock on Sunday at the auction yard. Barbecue starts at 11:30, and swine will start first. So watch the Facebook update for other animals need to be there and the emails, I believe.